So take another breath with me after that beautiful song and the powerful story behind it. Thank you. So with that, imagine that we have just handed out a piece of paper to each and every one of you. It could be that fan you're holding. And imagine in the other hand, you're holding a pencil. And then imagine that I asked you to draw out a map of your day, not as your day has actually been so far, but that magical day that you imagined happening when you first opened your eyes this morning and before any of the busyness and hustle and bustle of an actually day broke in. So you've got your daily map drawn. And now I'm handing you a second sheet of paper. And this time I ask you to draw out the map of what actually transpired since your eyes fluttered open awake and that you landed here in these pews. And then imagine that you get to overlay your two pieces of paper. And where are the points of convergence? And then where did you get blown a little bit off course? And then as we're map making here, recall the map that you drew for your own life a year ago and where you thought you would be today. And that map that you drew 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And then some of us can go as far back as 20 years, though we may not want to, or 30 years, though that might not feel good, 40, 50, we might not want to even admit that we were drawing maps that long ago. And what did those look like? And how do those maps compare to the actual journey that your life has taken? More often than I want to admit, I tell myself that I have control over my life. How many of you have made that statement before and then been laughed at? And some days I feel like I'm practically singing the lines from the poem Jared read earlier. This is the way is so clear. It shall all be a joy on the lines marked out. Yes, of course it will. When I consider the map I drew for myself 20 years ago and compare it to where I actually am today, I feel pretty silly thinking that I can map my life out for the next 10 or 15 years or so, though I really, really want to. I have this very clear vision of myself at 60, 13 years from now. I'm retired and I'm gardening and I'm working as a volunteer in a social justice organization. I'm kind of doing whatever it is I want to do, trying to get my husband not to retire, but at least slow down enough that I can see him every now and again. And so as I do all of my planning, I'm also trying to hold the truth that even while I am diligently laying out those lines for how I want my life to proceed, the wind not only may, but the wind certainly shall rise up and blow it all off course. And the question for our lives isn't how do we keep those winds from blowing? Because we can't. But the question is how do we hold our center when they inevitably do? For 4 weeks in worship during July and August, we're looking at how we make meaning in our lives in the midst of a culture that tells us it's not meaning, but it's happiness. That's what we should be looking for. In her book, The Power of Meaning, journalist Emily Esfahani Smith identifies those 4 pillars of meaning: belonging, purpose, storytelling, and transcendence. And last week, we considered what it means to nurture a sense of real belonging in our lives. And we looked at 2 components that are needed in order to nurture a sense of belonging. Anybody remember those 2 components from last week? Frequent, pleasurable interactions with other people, yes, and being in relationships of mutual care. I know some of you are answering in your minds out there. I know. And then this whole idea about mutual care points to our own responsibility and belonging, that it's not only about waiting for someone to reach out to us, but it's us being ready and willing to accept that embrace and care when it comes. And today we turn to our sense of purpose in the world. And the purpose that we're talking about today, it's not a set of goals, and it's not even a to-do list, though I love those and they're fun. But purpose is linked to our sense of what in the world are we doing with our lives? Who are we? And it's interwoven with our mind, heart, body, spirit connection. And it has two important dimensions. One is it rises up out of this deep congruence of what we feel like in here, and then what we're actually doing out there in the world, what we're getting our hands dirty with. And it also involves a contribution to the world. Psychologist William Damon writes that purpose is a part of one's personal search for meaning, but it also has an external component, the desire to make a difference in the world, to contribute to matters larger than the self. It feels good when we're out and helping others. So your purpose, it could be related to your work life, and I know that there are many of you out there who are absolutely dedicated to your chosen profession. It's also related to tending to your family or volunteering or working out in a garden. As theologian Frederick Buechner wrote, it's the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. It's when you feel that yes exclamation point coming out of you when you're doing whatever it is you're doing. And just like it's not always easy to find a place where you belong, or it may not be easy or natural to let other people into your life, purpose is not always right at our fingertips, right? We don't get our app out and put in an address toward purpose and think we're going to go from point, home, destination to wherever we're going to be. Purpose often emerges from pathless and wild seas. Have there been times in your own life when you tried so hard to make something happen? You just knew that whatever that thing was over there, that you were supposed to be part of it. It was going to have your name on it, your hands in it. That's where you needed to be. Right? And then no matter what you did, roadblocks came up in front of you and you just could not get there. Perhaps you were trying so hard to get to that particular place that you stumbled and fell and lay in the weeds. And I don't mean the pretty weeds that we all see on the side of the road, that if you look really, really closely, they have tiny blue or purple flowers on them that maybe would look okay in a flower arrangement if you had a few other things with it. No, I mean the thickest and thorniest and brambliest weeds that if you reach in there to pull them out, they claw you right back. And you might lose some of your skin to them. Those are the kind of weeds I'm talking about. Parker Palmer shares about how important those weedy places can be as we are listening for our purpose in the world. Palmer is a Quaker and a writer and teacher and activist, and if you have not come across his writings before, if you take nothing else home today, take home Parker Palmer and check out one of his books from the library. One of my favorites is Let Your Life Speak, Listening for the Voice of Vocation. And in that, he talks about a time in his mid-30s when he was deep in that rambling thicket and could not see a way out of it. He was at a time in his life where professionally it looked like he was doing great, but inside he felt desolate and alone and adrift, and he could not figure out, I have everything that society is telling me I should have. Why do I feel so unfulfilled inside? And so like a good Quaker, he went to a Quaker retreat center to find the answers. And while he was there, he kept telling people there how he felt. And in Quaker speak, he says, they would say, just breathe and way will open. And Parker Palmer was like, what? The way will open? Forget about it. I don't have time to wait for way to open. I'm in my mid-30s. I want to jump into my career. I want to feel all the awesome feels right now. So he struggled and he struggled and he struggled. And one day he had a conversation with an elder in the community named Ruth. And he said, people keep telling me way will open. I sit in the silence. I pray, I listen for the still small voice. Nothing. Why is it so quiet? And Ruth said, in my 60 plus years of living, way has never opened in front of me. And Parker Palmer was like, are you serious? Way has never opened in front of her in 60 years, I am on the wrong path. And then she says, but a lot of way has closed behind me, and that's had the same guiding effect. A lot of way has closed behind me. And Palmer realized that there was as much guidance in what does not and cannot happen in life as there is in what can and does happen, and maybe even more. But let's be real for a minute, okay? When way closes behind us, how many of us get into that centered spot with it? I don't. No. When way closes behind me, I do everything I can to barge forward. I am going to push those obstacles aside, and I am going to get where I think I need to go. It is so hard to get centered, is it not? And try to listen for what is calling us if it's in a direction that seems so unsurprising. Especially if our dead end sign is accompanied by rent that's due and you aren't sure who is going to pay that bill. Or if you're pursuing an expensive degree that's already halfway paid for and you realize, I don't think this is what I want to be doing. Or if you're at the end of a fulfilling career or your children have moved out and you look around wondering, who am I? If I am not this career person or if I'm not a parent. And you wonder, what is mine now to do in the world? Who am I? In our lesson earlier today, we learned about John Murray, the English preacher who believed in abundant love, who brought universalism to the United States, and who by a change in wind found his renewed purpose in life. One thing we heard alluded to in the story was that Murray had come from some hard times in England. In truth, he was lying face first in a bramble full of thickets. He lost everything. His infant son died. His wife died. 4 of his siblings died. And he wound up in so much debt that he was put in debtor's prison. Engulfed by depression, he said that he wished to pass through life unheard, unseen, unknown to all, as though I had never been. And in the midst of that despair, every way seemingly closed to him, something guided him toward that ship, and he left England to start fresh in this world. And who knows how voices will come for him. It seemed to come in the form of Thomas Potter greeting him on the beach, and he fought it, that calling to become a Universalist preacher. He was like, no way am I going to do that. But even the wind transpired to keep him on the Jersey shore just long enough to get him into that pulpit. And so just unlike John Murray, we can't stop the winds, can we? As much as we may want to try. And no matter our intention, we will fall, and oftentimes really hard, into the weeds of life. And we can't control that. But there's an element of religious and spiritual life that is honing our purpose in the world, and that honing is what we do through practice and paying attention. And so, if you will, take my third and last imaginary piece of paper, passing it out among you. Pick up that pencil, make sure it's sharp. May Sarton wrote, "Now I become myself. It's taken time, many years and places. I have been dissolved and shaken, worn other people's faces." The paper in your hands and the map that I ask you to draw now has you at the center. As you move through life becoming more and more yourself, how would you sketch that center that is you now, today? What fills you with passion? What do you love? What are your gifts? What makes your eyes light up and your heart sing? And how is that self that you'll sketch in the middle of that paper, how is that self connected to how you spend your days? And if you're sitting there with a twinge because you realize it's not quite as aligned as you would like it to be, I ask you, are there shifts you can make, no matter how small, that would bring more congruency between your inner life and your outer life, that will allow you to contribute meaningfully to the larger world? And this last piece of paper, I ask you to fold it up and tuck it into a pocket. And I invite you to take it out each morning and each evening to reflect on all that you are and how your day allows you to live in the promise of all that you are and all that you can be. And as you reflect on that, to know that this congregation, that this group of people, they belong to you and they are ready to journey further into a life of meaning with you. May it be so, and may you know abundant love. And we sing our closing hymn, Love Will Guide Us, 131. Please rise as body and spirit allow.